Hello, and welcome to Sports by Compian. My name, of course, is your host, Stephen Compian, and I am flying solo today as we break down the semifinals of UFL football. That is the United Football League's final. Four teams were left, and now we're down to two because the semifinals are in the rearview mirror. The final is ahead of us, and we are here to discuss it on Sports by Compian, as well as some MLR information for you fine folks as we head into the week one of their playoffs, their first playoff round, if you will. Lots to get to. Let's hop into it, Sports by Compian fans. I know you're excited because I'm excited, and here we go. So starting off first with the Birmingham Stallions versus the Michigan Panthers. Michigan Panthers have not won versus the Stallions in over 8 contests, I believe it was, or maybe 8 regular season times, and then they lost in the playoffs to them the previous year. So Stallions have kind of had Michigan's number. They've won the UFL the 2 years it was around before they joined the UFL. Then they won the UFL. So they've been arguably the best team in spring football since it's come into since it recently came back, And it's really impressive that these Michigan Panthers found a way on Saturday to get past Birmingham and finally make themselves into the final. As you see, we start these highlights with them already up 14-0. And, a lot of this just came down to Michigan executing well. Bryce Perkins had himself a day despite fighting through an ankle injury. He was moving around well. He was finding his receivers in space. They got a decent amount out of the run game. And that was huge for them to just be able to keep continuous drives going. Nothing too crazy in those first 2 touchdowns. Just basically Bryce finding his guys and moving the ball downfield until they could score. It's good stuff. But anyway, we see here the Stallions were struggling earlier. Great story for Smith, but he did struggle a little bit in this game. He was working out the whole articles on UFL.com. You can see he's working for Dunkin' Donuts, gets the call, hey, come back to the Stallions, gets his shot, takes them to the playoffs. Great regular season for him. Struggled in this game. He was struggling to get his momentum. He missed a really wide open wide receiver that would have been a touchdown to tie it up early. It was kind of one of those things the receiver definitely should have kept running. It was Dominic Rogers. Should have kept running for sure. Would have maybe found the end zone. But Smith did overthrow him a little bit, and that's one of those ones you can kind of put out there for your guy, and that's a touchdown. Or hit him on the money, and it's a touchdown because he was open. So I think the coach was frustrated with those kind of calls and tells him, hey, just focus up, find your guys. And that's where we pick off today, Sports by Compian fans. As you can see, they find their man, Deion Cole. And he's just an absolute stud. You can see how fast this guy is. He outruns most of the opponents. Just get the ball in his hands, and good things happen for the Stallions. The funny thing is that was really right in the middle of the Michigan Panthers head coach. They're talking about, hey, man, isn't this game going great? And he's like, yeah, but it's not over yet. Anything could happen. And bam, literally this play happens as they're in the interview. But just, decent coverage, but like 21 takes out his own corner instead of making the tackle. That's Puka Nakua's older brother, I believe. Mr. Nakua himself, who later on has a huge play for Michigan. In fact, let's go ahead and pull that one up right now because that was absolutely beautiful. You can see the Stallions get back into the game with that one. They get themselves a touchdown, get a huge stop on defense. Looks like they could go ahead and take back control of this game, at least tie it up going into halftime. They have the ball back, only down by 8 points. And this was kind of the play that ended up being the nail in the coffin for Mr. Smith. Ooh, Mr. Nakua himself finds the pick. I forget this gentleman's first name, but he is a Nakua. He is Puka Nakua's older brother. Hell of a pick six. Sends the Stallions right back into the hole. Now they're down 2 touchdowns again. And this is kind of what ultimately ended up being that he gets benched after this pick six, which I find a little strong. This is your guy who got you to the playoffs. You can't immediately go to Matt Corral as soon as there's an interception. But the coach was even hinting at it earlier in the game, which I also don't think is smart to put that pressure on your quarterback to, hey, we're looking to bench you if you keep messing up. It's like, I don't know if he needs that pressure. It's already the playoffs. He knows it, and he needs to play well. So I think some questionable decisions by Skip, the Stallions head coach, because I don't know, man. Do you pull your guy right after a pick six, which he did, and went to Matt Corral, Some fans maybe will say too little, too late. Others would say you can't pull your guy that quickly. So we'll leave that up for you fine folks to debate. But that was ultimately the play that sent Smith to the bench. Matt Corral comes in, gets the Stallions back on the board, puts together a couple good drives. And that whole time, though, Perkins is just battling. You see him breaking out of the pocket and going for decent runs despite the bad ankle. He had himself a really good day. And as you can see, he kept on scoring to stay ahead of the Stallions. This is kind of the touchdown that put it almost out of reach for the Stallions. And you can just see just terrible tackling here. Horrible tackling. No one really wanted this play. People just bumping into each other. It's just, I don't even know what the hell the Stallions are doing on that play, but nobody wants to tackle 17. And he takes it all the way to the house, about a 76-yarder. And this really kind of was the nail in the coffin for the Stallions. Obviously, lots of time on the clock, and they did respond with a couple more touchdowns as well. But they just couldn't stop the Panthers on offense. When you're going to be tackling like that, that's the type of things that happen. The Michigan Panthers defense ultimately does get one more interception to go ahead and seal this boy off against Matt Corral, and that is it for the Stallions. The Michigan Panthers move on to the UFL Championship. I believe their first time since before the league was formed back in the forever ago and departed. So it's huge for them, huge for the city of Michigan. There's apparently some decent attendance out there, so it's cool to see. And they will go ahead and take on the winner from your St. Louis Battlehawks, who were taking on the DC Defenders. This is basically the third time these two teams have seen each other in the UFL schedule. This game started off with a classic Battlehawks defense getting people off the field. They stopped the defenders, but dude, Max Duggan was just struggling to get comfortable in this game. He could not get anything completed. His runs were they were ready for it. They were watching him, and his windup. We have a couple plays here that's just his windup is so slow that he can't properly throw the ball, dude. His throwing motion is ridiculous. But anyway, who doesn't have a ridiculous throwing motion? This man, Mr. Jordan Ta'amu. Nice play action fake, and boom, just that safety. You just let your guy go right over top of you, and you hung out with your buddies down the middle. Really silly stuff. I don't know what the hell happened there, but Seth Williams goes over the top and makes it a beautiful catch for the first touchdown of the game. And yeah, you can see these safeties just kind of sit underneath there and don't do a whole lot and leave it wide open. And it's just, yeah, definitely there's probably a miscommunication there, something like that. 32 read it wrong. The other safety wasn't ready for it to be way over there. Rough coverage by the Battlehawks to give up that first touchdown against the old Defenders. So it started off bad. The Defenders had another nice drive, just drove it down the field and punched in a running touchdown. The Battlehawks did have some fight in them, though. This defense was one of the best defenses in the league for a reason. You can see there, bad read by Ta'amu, gets picked off by the Battlehawks defender, who ultimately sets up this Battlehawks to go in for a touchdown. They get a controversial defensive pass interference call against Akeem Butler. And the defender's corner didn't help himself at all by jumping up and throwing off his helmet and acting all crazy. So they lost 15 yards there. Ultimately, Battlehawks punch it in, as you can see they're about to do here with Mr. Jacob Sailors. Gets into the end zone. That was kind of the only fight we saw out of the Battlehawks in that first half. They get the ball back, after a defender's field goal. Hey, maybe we can get some points on the board. The fans need to see something. This has all been pretty terrible. But like I said, Duggan just has a ridiculous throwing motion. And when you take that long to deliver the ball, you're going to run into all kinds of problems. It gives those defenders an extra 2 seconds, 1 second to get to you, and that's enough. And this is actually the second fumble he had on the day where he was winding up to throw the ball. The first one the Battlehawks were able to recover, but this one obviously not. And there was calls to go to Brandon Severs, previous quarterback for the Seawolves, not the Seawolves, for the Seattle Dragons. So, this kid has had experience as receivers. He played good football before, probably a better throwing motion. He looked better in that game that they played against the Defenders going in week 10. So those calls to go to him, they maybe should have done that a little bit sooner. They do eventually do that because Duggan just had a rough day at the office and was never able to get the Battlehawks into this game defensively. And if you just keep on giving the ball back to Jordan Chapman, he's going to score points. He's probably going to end up being league MVP. He's a hell of a quarterback, proper release. It's kind of crazy he hasn't gotten his shot in the NFL yet, but shout out to the DC Defenders defense. They've got to play the Battlehawks enough this year, I think, and they learned what they wanted to do on defense to stop them. They came out with the appropriate game plan to stop Duggan and his scrambling he likes to do. That's mostly his game. He's not the best throwing. I think he ended with like 689 yards despite taking over in week 3. He was 5-0, in his time playing as the starter, but it's just it's rough. So you see an early poll with Skip pulling his Stallions quarterback, and then you see maybe a later poll with Bejic or something like that is the Battlehawks coach, but he wants to stick with his guy. You understand it, but ultimately Battlehawks couldn't get anything going on offense. Run game was absolutely stuffed. DC Defenders are moving on to the final versus the Michigan Panthers, and it's going to be a heck of a final. Both these teams have absolutely earned it. It's going to be a really good game. It's going to be hosted in the Battlehawks Stadium, which is pretty funny. But yeah, this was all kind of, I feel like the whole season was set up for the Battlehawks to figure something out and get to the final, and they just couldn't do it. You lose the main guy you were going to go with, like early going with Wilkins going down early, but you got to have a better contingency plan. It's harder in this league, I get it. Finding the Stallions certainly experience that down to like their 4th quarterback or whatever. So it's tough fighting the guy when your main dude goes down, but yeah, the Battlehawks were a mess this year, and this just feels like what they do every year. They can't seem to win in the playoffs. They can't seem to show up for these big games. This is the 3rd year in a row or so they've lost in the semifinals. It's hard, man. It's hard. As a Battlehawks fan myself, like, I'm not losing sleep over this or anything, but it's certainly disappointing. And they're kind of set up to be like the premier team of the league with the highest attendance in the league, but they're not getting that chance. Because they can't seem to get over the hump of these semifinals. So, yeah, they need to be better. But either way, shout out to Rigoberto Blankenship. My man is getting his shot with, I believe the Jets are working him out right now. Solid move, Jets. You can't go wrong with this guy. He doesn't miss. He always nails his field goals. And I'm sure a lot of these other guys are going to be getting opportunities too now as the league starts to wind up. Already some of the teams who missed the playoffs, a lot of their players are getting looks. It's really cool to see. I hope the development continues. Maybe a little bit of a disappointment year as far as viewership. But you know what, dude? ESPN Plus blows, man. Let me just say that. All right, I signed up to this thing thinking I was going to be able to watch all the games. That was stupid of me because ESPN only has what ESPN has, which I only ended up being the St. Louis game, not the St. Louis game, the Stallions game. But man, for what you're paying compared to what you could actually watch, it didn't seem great. I don't think you even get all the MLR games. And then, yeah, you're signing into multiple services to try to watch these games for people who don't have cable. And it's just a little annoying. I think they could maybe find an easier way to do that. But, I'm probably just complaining because I don't have cable. And it makes it slightly harder. So, either way, that's going to be it for UFL. They're headed to the championship game, as I mentioned. Before I let you fine folks go, I do want to go ahead and talk to you about some MLR playoffs. And it is coming. And you folks in particular should be excited about it because we got a flying slate of rugby games prepared for you. Mostly Saturday. There's a couple games Sunday too. But yeah, it's going to be a really great time. Your Sports by Compian truly should be on the scene for the Chicago Hounds hosting their first ever MLR playoff game there in SeatGeek Stadium. As I mentioned, Sports by Compian will try to be on the scene with people so we can get you some clips so you can see what's happening as the Battlehawks take on Old Glory DC. Old Glory DC coming off of a bit of a beatdown versus I don't remember. No, they lost to Seattle. No. Was it Seattle? I don't remember. They lost though because obviously they rested most of their starters. Wasn't really a reason to throw them in there and potentially get hurt. Weren't going to be able to change their playoff positioning. So instead, they just rested most of the boys, and now they travel to Chicago for playoff round. They have also kind of struggled to get out of those first couple rounds of the playoffs. So I'm sure they're going to be coming in, trying to make a statement. Chicago, high up on the Western Conference. Can they make their stand? Can they continue to win? The other team hosting will be Utah Warriors, are going to be hosting Seattle, who got in by the skin of their teeth. Punched out San Diego, even though San Diego absolutely butchered the Free Jackets, who I suspected the same thing, resting a lot of their starters. They took it to them. Didn't ultimately matter as Seattle got the win over Miami and moved on and got that last playoff spot. Now they will travel to Utah to take on the Warriors to see if they can advance to the Western semifinal. No, in the Western final. So exciting times in the Western Conference. We'll see what happens. That other game will be both of the games for Saturday. Obviously, the one on the West Coast kicking off much later Eastern time, 10 p.m. So that's kind of crazy. I don't know why they did that. I feel like you could have done it earlier in the day. But I guess they wanted these both to be night games to kind of get the atmosphere for it. And then they turn around and do a Sunday game early, which is going to be the Free Jackets in Miami. Obviously, on the East Coast, you guys stay early. And so this checks out. But anyway, yeah, so Free Jackets are hosting the Miami Sharks. Miami Sharks have been frisky all year. You know, they are one of those teams that always takes it to absolutely everybody. So they're going to be certainly going in there looking to get this win against the defending champions who resurrected, had a bit of a slow start, but absolutely turned it on as the year went on. And now they find themselves, I believe, in the first over on the East. And now they're hosting the Miami Sharks. Familiar territory for the Free Jackets, hosting playoff games. We'll see who gets the better of this one. I believe it's the Miami Sharks' first year in the playoffs, so should be interesting. Also, a first year, I believe, is RFC LA. They got themselves a wild card spot, you could call it, headed into play against the Houston SaberCats, who lost to Chicago and then turned around and won against I'm sorry, Sports Compian, man. So let's just have a look and see what happened the previous week. Either way, so yeah, Seawolves beat Miami. They beat Anthem, and poor Anthem will end the year without a win. I don't even know if they won last year, Sports Compian fans. It is going on 2 whole freaking seasons of no wins. That's really rough for supposedly the developmental side of the USA Eagles. So yeah, Anthem needs to clean it up. But either way, SaberCats get themselves a win, headed into the playoffs, and now they will host LA. LA's one of those teams, very frisky as well. Everyone in this league is super competitive and very close, and you never know what you're going to get week to week. So these playoff games are all going to be great. I think obviously Free Jackets are probably a favorite just because they are the defending champions. Utah's looks absolutely dominant throughout most of their season. The Hounds have also looked good and have their bad moments too. Same could be said for any one of these teams. But either way, the host teams slightly stronger, definitely taking on the teams with the less amount of wins coming in. So we'll see what happens here, man. It's going to be a heck of a playoff first round. Let's go Hounds, man. We need to take care of business and get to the Western Conference final again, which we were there last year too. So it'll be sweet to do either 2 years in a row. Probably taking on the Utah, but you could never count out Seattle. They're just one of those teams that even towards the end of the year, they've absolutely put it on and found themselves in the playoff spot. They started off really bad and turned that around. I bet San Diego regrets starting well and then completely falling off. So you got to find the balance there, man. You got to have some wins and some losses. Jeez, guys. But anyway, MLR playoffs coming your way, Sports by Compian fans. Get excited if you aren't already excited. Anyway, that's been it for this solo episode. We appreciate you tuning in and liking and subscribing to our content because we do appreciate it. You know, makes us feel good about doing these videos, which we do enjoy doing. Thank you so much, fans. Continue to stay posted for more videos. Sports by Compian.